This afternoon I want to talk about corruption, which is a cancer that eats the souls of nations. Corruption is one of the most destructive forces known to humanity. An invisible plague that eats away at the moral fiber of families, the integrity of societies, and the stability of nations. It has been called many names: the silent killer of progress, the theft of public trust, and the cancer that corrodes development. At its core, corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. It manifests in bribery, nepotism, favorism, embezzlement, fraud, and deliberate manipulation of laws and systems to serve selfish ends. Across the world, corruption has become a universal tragedy. Whether in the heart of Africa, the corridors of power in Europe, the bustling capitals of Asia, or the mighty institutions of America, corruption knows no boundary. It destroys dreams, discourages honest efforts, widens inequality, and erodes the very foundation of democracy and good governance. Yet corruption does not begin in government offices or parliament. It begins much earlier, in our homes, in our upbringing, in the moral choices we make every day. For the smallest dishonest act to grant the theft of public resources, corruption is a chain reaction of moral decay. To fight it effectively, humanity must confront not only the corrupt leaders but also the culture that tolerates and breeds corruption. Defining corruption: a deep moral and social breakdown. Corruption is not only a legal offense, but also a moral failure. The Transparency International defines it as an abuse of entrusted power for private gain. The definition captures both public and private corruption, whether by the public servant demanding bribe or a business executive manipulating contracts for personal profit. But at a deeper level, corruption is a betrayal of collective trust. It occurs when persons placed in position of responsibility, be it as a parent, a teacher, a police officer, or a president, uses the position to advance personal interest rather than the public good. Corruption can be classified into three main types. 1. Petty corruption, which involves small-scale bribery and favorism in everyday interactions, such as paying a small token to a police officer or a clerk. 2. Grand corruption, which involves high-level abuse of power by top officials in government or corporations, often involving millions or billions of dollars. 3 is systematic corruption, where corruption is no longer an exception but a norm, a situation where every institution, from schools to courts, is permitted with dishonest practices. When corruption becomes systematic, it ceases to be an act of creed alone. It becomes a way of life. Sadly, in many developing countries, including Kenya and across Africa, corruption has become institutionalized, normalized, and even glamorized. The roots of corruption, from families to nations. 1. The family, the first school of integrity or dishonesty. Every child learns from home. When a parent lies to a teacher, manipulates truth to win favor, or rewards dishonesty, a seed of corruption is planted. In many households, children grew up witnessing subtle but harmful behaviors, such as bribing officials to fast-track documents, cheating on taxes, or using influence to get undeserved favors. These acts appear harmless, yet they shape moral attitudes. When families fail to nurture honesty and accountability, society loses its moral compass. The fight against corruption must therefore start at the dinner table, where truth, hard work, and integrity are taught and practiced. Then too is society, a culture that rewards the corrupt. Society plays a significant role in either encouraging or discouraging corruption. In many communities, corrupt individuals are celebrated for their wealth and power, regardless of how they acquired it. The honest and hardworking are often mocked as foolish and naive. The inversion of values breeds hopelessness among the youth and legitimizes corruption as survival strategy. In Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and other African nations, it is not uncommon to find people who steal from the public but are later elected into political office. Society often forgives corrupt if it is accompanied by generosity or public loyalty. The dangerous culture makes corruption a social habit rather than an individual sin. Number 3 is counties and local governments decentralizing corruption. Devolution in countries like Kenya was meant to bring services closer to the people and promote accountability. Yet, in many cases, corruption was decentralized rather than eradicated. County officials often misuse development funds meant for healthcare, roads, and agriculture. Tendering processes are manipulated, and projects are left incomplete. Monuments are of theft and betrayal. When the local leaders divert funds meant for water, schools, or hospitals, they directly rob the poor of their right to life and dignity. In counties such as Bungoma, Turkana, and Kisumu, evidence of this misuse can be seen in ghost projects and inflated budgets. Number 4 is national level, that is institutional and political corruption. At the national level, corruption takes more sophisticated forms, from electoral manipulation to mega scandals involving billions. State corporations, procurement systems, and infrastructure projects have become breeding grounds for looting. In Kenya, scandals like the Golden Bag, Anglo leasing, and NYS thefts remain painful reminders of how corruption has crippled nation development. In other African countries like Nigeria, billions of dollars from oil revenues have vanished into private pockets. Globally, corruption scandals in Brazil, Operation in Car Wash, Malaysia, 1MDB, and Russia illustrate that no nation is immune. When leaders steal public funds, they rob not only the present generation, but also the future. Because every stolen coin represents a hospital not built, a road not completed, a youth not employed, and a life lost. Devastating effects of corruption on development. Economic stagnation and poverty. Corruption suffocates economic growth. When investors perceive a country as corrupt, they withdraw or refuse to invest. Public funds are misused, leading to poor infrastructure, poor service delivery, and low productivity. In developing nations, corruption can consume up to 25% of the national budget. That means every fourth coin collected in taxes is stolen. Consequently, essential sectors like education, health, and agriculture suffer chronic underfunding. The poor are the hardest hit. They pay bribes for basic services, live in poverty, and endure unemployment because opportunities are sold to the highest bidder. Corruption, therefore, is not a victimless crime. It is an organized theft from the powerless. Political instability and poor governance. Corruption breeds injustice and political unrest. When electoral systems are manipulated through bribery, democracy loses meaning. The people lose trust in leaders and in institutions, leading to protests, violence, and revolutions. In Africa, corruption has been the root cause of coups, dictatorship, and civil unrest. Leaders cling to power to protect their corrupt empires, while citizens suffer in silence or revolt in despair. Then weak institutions and the erosion of rule of law. Corruption destroys institutions that uphold justice. When judges, police officers, and investigators are compromised, the law becomes a tool of oppression rather than justice. In many countries, the corrupt walk free while the poor languish in prisons. Once the judiciary and anti-corruption bodies are captured, the system becomes self-perpetuating. Corruption protects corruption. Then social decay and loss of moral values. When corruption becomes widespread, it corrodes morality. Citizens begin to believe that success is not through hard work, but through manipulation and deceit. This moral decay erodes social trust, leading to division, greed, and hopelessness. Developmental paralysis is also another factor. In developing nations, corruption delays projects and inflates costs. Roads are built at twice their actual cost. Schools are built on paper. Hospitals are opened without equipment. Billions of dollars are lost annually to ghost projects. In Kenya and many African countries, these incomplete projects stand as permanent reminders of failed leadership. The global face of corruption. Corruption is not an African disease, it is a global epidemic. In Europe, high-level scandals such as the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, exposed how world leaders, billionaires, and corporations hide wealth in offshore accounts to evade taxes. In the United States, corporate billionaires and corporations hide wealth in offshores to evade taxes equally. They also lobbying sometimes blurs and the line between influence and bribery. In Asia, countries like Malaysia and China have battled billion-dollar embezzlement cases involving top government officials. The World Bank estimates that more than $1 trillion is paid in bribes every year globally. Meanwhile, developing countries lose about $50 billion through illicit financial flows. These funds could transform healthcare, education, and employment, yet they end up enriching a few. The irony, when anti-corruption agents become the corrupt. One of the most tragic realities is that even the institutions created to fight corruption often fall victim to it. In many countries, anti-corruption agencies are politicized, underfunded, or manipulated by those in power. In Kenya, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission (EACC) has been accused at times of selective justice, pursuing small offenders while shielding powerful figures. In Nigeria, similar complaints have been raised against the EFCC, where politics sometimes dictate who gets investigated. Globally, even international institutions are not immune. The cooperation scandals with the fever, the UN Oil Food Program, and other global organizations show how even watchdogs can lose moral authority. When anti-corruption crusaders become compromised, the people lose hope. It is like a doctor infected with the disease he was meant to cure. This is the way forward, or rather recommendations for gapping corruption. To end corruption, humanity must treat it as both a moral and institutional problem. The fight must begin within individual conscience and extend to systematic reforms. By 1. Strengthening the moral foundations. Education system must emphasize ethics, honesty, and civic responsibility. Children must be taught that success achieved through corruption is failure in disguise. Religious institutions should reclaim their prophetic voice in condemning corruption, not causing up with the corrupt politicians for donations. Empowering anti-corruption institutions. That is, agencies like the EACC, EFCC, and similar bodies across Africa must be independent, well-funded, and free from political interference. They must prosecute all offenders regardless of status and political affiliation. Enforcing transparency and accountability. Governments must digitize services to reduce human contact and eliminate bribery opportunities. Public procurement systems should be transparent, and citizens must have access to information on how public funds are used. Then also protecting whistleblowers and journalists. Those who expose corruption often risk their lives. Government should enact and enforce strong whistleblower protection laws. Journalists must be allowed to investigate without fear of intimidation or assassination. Then promoting civic participation. Citizens must hold leaders accountable through active participation, questioning, and peaceful advocacy. Civil society, media, and youth movements must unite to demand integrity. Global cooperation. Corruption is transnational. Stolen funds are often hidden in foreign banks. International corruption is therefore crucial. Through mechanisms like the asset recovery agreements, tax transparency, and financial intelligence sharing. In a nutshell, therefore, corruption is more than a theft. It is a betrayal of trust, a denial of justice, and a death sentence to the poor. It kills silently, destroying hopes, dreams, and nations. To defeat it, the world must rise to a new moral awakening. Families must raise honest children. Societies must celebrate integrity, not wealth. Governments must act with transparency and citizens must refuse to bribe or be bribed. The war on corruption is not just political, it is spiritual, moral, and generational. The future of Africa, Kenya, and the entire world depends on whether we can reclaim integrity as the highest virtue of leadership and citizenship. History will remember not those who were powerful, but those who were honest, those who stood firm when corruption seemed unbeatable. For when integrity becomes the heartbeat of the nation, true development and justice will finally flourish.